I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. Today, we are joined by an incredibly special guest, and you may hear the background noise. We are here at True Food Kitchen in New Orleans, which we'll get to later. But I am here with Dr. Andrew Weil, a pioneer and leader in the field of integrative medicine. He graduated from Harvard in 1964 with a degree in botany, which we'll talk more about, followed by Harvard Medical School in 1968. After his medical internship, Dr. Weil spent a year working with the National Institute of Mental Health, then wrote his first book, The Natural Mind. From 1971 till 75, Dr. Weil traveled through North and South America and Africa to learn about drug use in other cultures, medicinal plants, and alternative methods of treating disease. He was on the research staff of the Harvard Botanical Museum for over a decade. And in 1994, Dr. Weil founded the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona, where he's also clinical professor of medicine and professor of public health. Dr. Weil is a nationally recognized expert, educator, and advocate for whole body wellness centered on a healthy mind, body, and spirit. And we happen to be together today here in New Orleans, celebrating the opening of the first True Food Kitchen here in the city, which Dr. Weil is founder and co-owner of. So welcome, Dr. Weil. I'm super excited.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction.
I am a tremendous fan. I've been a lifelong fan, but I'm not just a fan. I've learned from and been inspired by you for decades now. And so, I feel like I'm sitting down with an old friend catching up, but it's one-sided because you're just meeting me. So I feel like I have all this familiarity with you. So you've done so much through your career and continue to be, and there's a lot that we'll kind of get into, but when we first talk about integrative medicine, tell us what this is, because I often hear you referred to, and I refer to you as the father or pioneer of integrative medicine.
Well, this is an up-and-coming field. I think it's the future of medicine. It is the intelligent combination of standard medicine with natural therapies, lifestyle interventions, mind-body approaches, selective use of alternative therapies. And this is really the kind of medicine that people want and that makes economic sense. So at the Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona, I train doctors, and we've now graduated almost 2,000 physicians from a very intensive 2-year fellowship in which they learn all the things they didn't learn in medical school, starting with nutrition.
So this is then they then take that information and have a far-reaching impact literally all over the world.
Well, many of these people are in practice. Well, I think we have people in practice in all states. Many of them are teaching, training other people. Many of them work at academic institutions. So as I say, it's a spreading movement. We also train nurse practitioners. We train medical residents. We have programs for medical students. We also train allied health professionals, everyone from social workers to speech therapists, psychologists, and so forth. And we have online courses for the general public as well.
So it's a 2-year program. Do people live there? Is it?
No, it's non-residential. Originally, when we started, we had a 2-year residential program that was relatively small, but that gave us a chance to develop a curriculum that we then translated into an online format. So the way this works is that the people who take this spend 3 weeks out of the 2 years in Tucson at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And the rest is done online.
So any of us, registered dietitians included,
you are all eligible, not for that full 2-year one, but for a shorter course that we have.
Did you create the term, or I know that you've used the term and popularized the term integrative health?
Well, I'll take credit for it. I don't know that whether I invented it or not, but I think I'm in the main popularizer of it.
Definitely, I think that you have brought it to the mainstream to where it is something that things that I think 20 years ago were looked at as very, kind of far out there. We're realizing aren't so much now, and you've been an advocate for these for years.
Right, and there are now many textbooks of integrative medicine. Oxford University Press has a series of volumes that I edit for clinicians in various specialties on integrative medicine. The Institute of Medicine has held a conference on this. It is rapidly becoming a mainstream phenomenon.
And making it really easy or easier for practitioners to integrate this into their practice. So
now, one consideration is that as this has become popular, there are many practitioners who just advertise themselves as being practicing integrative medicine who have not had standardized training. So I would urge consumers to find out, how a person has learned this.
What questions should they ask?
Well, are they a graduate of our fellowship or some other fellowship? Are they accredited by, there's an American Board of Integrated Medicine, for example?
For our listeners, you're hearing all this background noise. Usually it's super quiet. I'm doing this at my dining room table or in my home. We are here at True Food Kitchen, which is Dr. Weil's restaurant, which we'll talk more about coming up. But so that's going to be the background noise you're hearing. So when it comes to your approach and with integrative medicine, for years, a lot of what you have researched, observed, and been an advocate of, the science is just catching up. So that evidence-based peer review research is just catching up to it. So what's your take on that? Because so many times people say, well, you can only follow the science. And so, but there's an element of not only, number one, common sense, but observing the trends, observing what happens. And if something isn't harmful for us and may have a benefit.
That's a very good point. First of all, there's a lot of evidence out there, and many mainstream doctors are just unaware of it. And that's true of many botanical remedies, for example, of many mind-body interventions. One of the principles that I always stress and teach is that in evaluating new therapies or unknown therapies, we should use a sliding scale of evidence that works like this. The greater the potential of a treatment to cause harm, the stricter the standards of evidence it should be held to for efficacy. If we followed that in standard medicine, we'd save ourselves a lot of trouble. For example, I teach breathing exercise to all patients. And based on my own experience with simple breath control, I have found this to be enormously powerful and successful intervention. I'm not bothered by the fact that there's not a lot of research on
because there's
breathing,
zero
because
risk.
people are not interested because the risk is zero or negligible.
And for the practitioners, as you said, there's evidence on a lot of the supplements, the herbal remedies, but they're not aware of it. I use Natural Medicine Database often.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And that is something that it's a paid, there's different ways, organizations you can belong to. There's a nutrition group that I belong to that's one of the perks of being a member.
Yeah.
But it is something that's a paid access, but it's not very pricey, and it allows you to search by supplement, but it also allows you to search by condition.
Yep. That's a good idea. I use that one as well.
And that'll let you see what do people use it for, what is it effective for, but also what kind of things can it have side effects or interactions. So over the years, how much would you say that you've clashed with traditional medicine or people who practice it?
Well, I've been writing and saying the same things about health, medicine, medical education for probably 45 years. And at the start of that, nobody paid any attention to me. Then I got a larger and larger following in the general public, but none of my medical colleagues would listen to anything that I was saying. Well, they would say that I was just way out there, that I was advocating unproven therapies and so forth. And that changed in the early 1990s. And I think that was when the economics of healthcare really began to go south. And interestingly, it was only when the pocketbooks of institutions really got squeezed that they opened up to what consumers had been demanding.
So now open minds to it.
Right. I think we're forced, it's consideration of bottom line costs that are driving this, because our healthcare system, as you know, is in tatters. It's not a healthcare system anyway, it's a disease management system. And most of the diseases we're trying to manage are lifestyle related diseases that we can't seem to prevent.
And it's easier to ask for a medication or prescribe a medication than dig deep and make these lifestyle changes.
The costs of this system are killing us. We now, I think it's up to 18% of our gross domestic product spent on healthcare, far more than any other country in the world. And yet our health outcomes are worse than most other developed countries. The World Health Organization rates us 38th, on a par with Serbia. It's any way you look at it. It's infant mortality, longevity, rates of chronic disease. Something is really wrong with this picture.
Very wrong.
Yeah.
So as you've come through this and you've had more and more acceptance by traditional medicine, what were some of the things just in the past or topics that had the biggest backlash? Things that you said, "Oh wow, this is stirring it up."
Well, if you look at it, you mentioned that I studied botany before I went into medicine, and I really have a lifelong career interest in medicinal plants. There is a common, I see this, just drives me crazy when I see this in the news or see people say this, that plants are dangerous, because they're unknown, uncontrolled, whereas the products of pharmaceutical laboratories are safe. We see, I think the last statistics I read, the direct cause of death in hospitalized patients by pharmaceutical drugs, it's now about the fourth leading cause of death in the hospitalized population, amounting to something like at least 200,000 deaths a year. That's just in the hospitalized population. And these are not mistakes. This is the right drug given to the right patient, the right dose for the right indication, and more than 200,000 people a year die. That's not acceptable. You can count on the fingers of one hand deaths from herbal remedies, and almost always they result from mistakes. Somehow a toxic plant has gotten mislabeled and distributed. So the disparity there is enormous, and yet you hear people saying that you should be aware of herbal remedies and plant remedies. That drives me crazy.
And the stats that you just said about, deaths from medications also tells us anything that we can do to prevent those in the first place. And that's where our lifestyle, anyone listening to this podcast is listening to it to see what can I do to live better.
And by the way, when we test drugs scientifically, we test them against placebos. We never test them against lifestyle interventions. And that would be much more useful information. How does a medication stack up against a change in diet or an exercise regime? That kind of information would be really useful to have.
I agree completely. So when we're talking trends and, kind of that hindsight over the past decades of your career, what are some of the trends that you were ahead of the curve on that you were talking about that no one was, and now they're everywhere?
I could go on and on.
Yes.
One was trans fats, which in a book that I wrote in the early 1980s, I warned people about trans fats. This was long before anybody was talking about them. I think a major one is the role of inflammation in chronic disease. I began seeing this on the medical horizon really quite some time ago and began talking about chronic low-level inflammation being the root cause of most of the serious diseases that kill and disable people prematurely.
And give some examples of that, because I think people don't really tie in inflammation with a lot of these.
Well, we all know inflammation on the surface of the body. It's local redness, heat, swelling, and pain in an area that's been injured or under attack. But we aren't aware of low-level, imperceptible inflammation throughout the body. And it's that kind of inflammation that over time is productive of disease. One example is coronary artery disease, which begins with inflammation in the lining of arteries. And it may even be that cholesterol deposits are flawed healing responses of the body trying to patch areas damaged by inflammation. Alzheimer's disease begins as inflammation in the brain. That's why ibuprofen has a protective effect against Alzheimer's disease. And cancer is linked here too, because anything that increases inflammation in the body also stimulates cells to divide more frequently. You can't separate those two things. And when cells divide more frequently, the risk of malignant transformation is increased. So anything that has an anti-inflammatory action also has a cancer protective action. Aspirin is an example, which has some powerful cancer protective effects in the GI tract. So I think this is a powerful idea that just came into popular consciousness relatively recently. I was onto this long before. And this is, by the way, one of the things that led me to design an anti-inflammatory diet, which is the basis of the food served in True Food Kitchen.
And the menu here is incredible. Full of color, full of flavor, but not full of white starches and sugar.
Right, yeah, right. And also the bad fat. The reason that the mainstream diet is pro-inflammatory is that it gives us the wrong kinds of fats, the wrong kinds of carbs, and not enough of the protective elements, which are mostly found in fruits, vegetables, herbs, and spices. So in designing an anti-inflammatory diet, I used the Mediterranean diet as a template because we have overwhelming evidence for that being a healthy way to eat. And people like it. So I tweaked that by adding Asian influences, things like green tea and Asian mushrooms and turmeric and ginger, because I've spent a lot of time in Asia and really like the cuisines of Asian countries. So that's how I came up with this anti-inflammatory diet. And at the very top of my anti-inflammatory pyramid is dark chocolate. Many people are happy to hear.
So the trends that you were ahead of the curve on, the anti-inflammatory diet, limiting trans fats. No, matcha is one that I've heard you talk about a lot, and I think people are just now becoming aware of it, but you've been into this for decades.
Well, actually, even longer. I went to Japan when I was 17 in 1959 and lived with Japanese families. And the second night that I arrived in Japan, this was November of 1959, the mother of my host family, we didn't have any language in common, took me next door to her neighbor who was a practitioner of tea ceremony, and she did a tea ceremony for me. And two things about it just amazed me. One was the color of this powdered tea, just this brilliant green, and the flavor of it when it was prepared, and also the bamboo whisk, which is a marvel of Japanese engineering. So
it's so simple, but yet so effective.
So I was really enamored with that. I brought some back to the States with me. Nobody had ever heard of matcha. And then over the years, when I would go to Japan, I'd bring matcha back. I would turn people onto it. And
let me ask, when you were, how is it that you went to Japan when you were 17? Because most 17-year-olds aren't heading there.
I had I lucked on to I got a scholarship to an experimental school called the International School of America that took a group of students around the world to live with Native families for an academic year. And our first stop was Japan. That was a life-changing experience.
Wow. How many different places did you go?
I think we went to about something like 15 or 16 countries.
In this year when you were in high school?
Yeah, that was between high school and college.
Wow.
And I really was never the same. And since then, travel has always been a big part of my life. And I think that having the perspectives of other cultures is invaluable. You know, just even looking at food traditions in other cultures, as well as medical practices. So anyway, I tried to popularize matcha a long time ago, and I think in the late 80s or 90s, I worked with a Japanese tea company and was selling matcha through my website, drweil.com, but it didn't catch on. It was like ahead of its time. And now it's been quite amazing to see what's happened. However...
And when you started, you probably thought, this is going to be fantastic. Everyone's going to love it. You know? Yeah.
But now, as it has become very popular, the sad thing is that many people have never tasted good matcha because matcha deteriorates very quickly. It's so finely powdered that if it's not stored properly, it oxidizes, it loses its brilliant green color, it becomes bitter. And a lot of people who've tried matcha here think they don't like it or really never tasted the good stuff. So I was determined to make very high quality matcha available. So I founded a company. I got the URL matcha.com and founded a company, made a relationship with a matcha producer outside of Kyoto that's a very good quality product. And so I've been selling that and making that available here.
So very easy to remember, matcha.com. You can check it out.
Yes.
Explain to our listeners the difference between matcha and what we think of as just regular green tea.
Well, first of all, a lot of the green tea that's sold here is not great compared to good green tea. But the tea that is used to make matcha is grown under special conditions. It's grown under very heavy shade, about a 90% shade cloth for the few weeks before harvest. And in response to this, the leaves become bigger and thinner, and they produce more chlorophyll to try to make more energy from the sunlight that's available. They also produce more of the flavor components and antioxidants and other compounds that contribute to matcha's health effects. So then these leaves are carefully cleaned, processed, dried, and stored until they're pulverized. They're ground between grinding stones, and then packed carefully. So it's the only form of tea in which you consume the whole leaf. And there's been a number of studies showing that that matcha's antioxidant power is very great, and that there are well-documented health benefits of green tea in general, of green tea in particular, and matcha also in particular.
And so whenever you say that that we consume the leaf, that's because it's ground into this fine powder, and unlike a green tea where you're
steeping it
and then removing it.
This you actually whisk these fine particles in the water, and then you consume
them all. Right. So you're basically drinking the ground tea leaf, but it doesn't seem like it. So trends that you were ahead of the curve on, we've kind of touched on. I'm sure there's 1,000.
There's many. I mean, when I think back, I was warning people about the dangers of electromagnetic fields, long before people were talking about this, talking about environmental causation of illness, a lot of stuff like this.
And what about failure? So I hear the quote often, something, there's different ways that people say it, but people say things like, there are no failures, only opportunities for learning. But I'm like, all right, let's be honest. There's some things that just fail that everything is a learning experience, but there's some things that we say, wow.
Well, I've changed my mind on a number of topics as I've seen new evidence. I mean, I'll give you one example. Again, this also goes back to the probably late 1980s, there was a lot of enthusiasm for beta carotene as a supplement. And in particular, I and other people were advising people who were smokers or had smoked to take beta carotene to reduce the risk of lung cancer. Turns out that doing that actually increases the risk of lung cancer. And whereas we know that fruits and vegetables that contain beta carotene and the whole spectrum of carotenoid pigments are highly protective against cancer.
Very different than the supplement separately.
Of taking one element out and giving it as a supplement, and also in the context of smokers. So, that's one that I changed. I also used to recommend, along with Linus Pauling and others, very high doses of vitamin C. And then I was convinced by evidence that I saw that the body really can't use more than about 250 milligrams a day. And there's no point in taking large doses.
Any projects that you've done or really poured a lot of time and energy into that just plunked?
I think there were a lot of them. In the 1970s, I started with several other people, a nonprofit organization called the Beneficial Plant Research Association, whose mission was to bring unusual natural products to market and make them available here. And,
which sounds really cool.
Sounds really cool. But again, this was way ahead of its time, and we didn't really get anywhere with that.
And I ask those because I think you do so much, and you put yourself out there, and you take these risks, and you've had so much of it be so incredibly well received and successful that I also like to kind of say, well,
there have definitely been failures and false starts, and you learn from them. Now with the restaurant, this is one I felt really strongly about because I love good food. I like to eat out, but generally I make better food at home than I can get out.
And this is anything but a plunk. I just made up the word plunk, but it's anything but that. I mean, this is a restaurant. We can switch gears to True Food Kitchen a bit so you can understand why you're hearing this background noise. But True Food Kitchen, if you haven't been to one, check it out. And we're at the first location to open in New Orleans. And this is your 29th
location. Yeah.
And now you're in 13 states.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And the entire menu is centered on the anti-inflammatory diet you've developed.
I think one of the reasons it's successful is there's something for everyone here. So meat eaters can find things to eat, vegetarians, vegans, people on keto diets, paleo diets, gluten-free people. So we really make an effort to provide something for everyone. But above all, the food is delicious and beautiful. And the fact that it's healthy in a way, is in the background, but it is. And the battle that I've fought all of my life is to convince people that there's no opposition between food that's good and food that's good for you. Most people I meet think that eating healthy means giving up everything you like. And the only way you can convince them otherwise is to actually give them the experience of eating food that is very beautiful and very delicious and healthy.
And people who come in a lot of times there's people who come, there's one person who's really gung-ho and says, we got to go. Right. They bring their other friends who may not be super into wellness, but it exposes them to these things, and they're able to try these new things, and they may go in thinking they don't love it, and they come out saying, how can I get more of this?
Now, in general, and I think this is true in many areas of wellness today, women are in the forefront. And
they're the decision makers of where to go eat.
Their husbands along to this, and the husbands are often very pleasantly surprised to find that they can have steak tacos here and they like them. By the way, with our fellowship in integrative medicine, a number of the physician fellows that have come through there have told me that their wives read one of my books and told them they had to do this training.
It's incredible.
So there you go.
Yeah, the influence of women, the power of women. Yeah. So how did the concept come about? You told me a little bit before this, but share with our listeners, because I think this is really cool. It's where, the passion is there, and then how do you have that outlet to make it a reality?
Well, as I said, I had no awareness or skill of the business of restaurants, so I always shied away from that. But I was introduced to a very successful restaurateur in Arizona, and I suggested him the possibility of this concept, and he didn't get it. He said health food doesn't sell. I think he thought I meant tofu and sprouts. So I cooked for him and his wife. He liked the food. and his wheels began to turn, and he found a location in Phoenix, which he said he was willing to give this a try, but he was very skeptical.
How long between when you first started talking with him, then dinner, then a reality?
I think it was about 6 months. We found an executive chef who I worked with. We created a menu, and then I had a lot of fights with him. I mean, there was a lot of compromising. For instance, initially, I didn't want any meat on the menu. He said, you have to have meat. So, I agreed. We had this steak taco dish, which is one of our most popular dishes. I went in the day it was about to open, and there was soda on the menu. I said, you can't do this. And he said, you can't have a restaurant unless you serve this. I said, well, they're healthy alternatives. So that we got off. I also saw...
What kind of, like soda, like a natural organic-y, or like...
We had natural organic, but then we moved from there to create our own natural refreshments using fresh ingredients. He also had artificial sweeteners on the table. I said, you can't do this.
Gasp.
But in the going back and forth, I think that was another reason for success. That was through these compromises, because he knew about the business of restaurants and I didn't.
He's got the reality of here's what people want, and you have the idealistic of this is what we need to do.
Right.
So it helped kind of.
But interesting, he remained totally skeptical of this. And when the restaurant opened, it's 11 years ago, there were lines around it before it opened.
And this was in Phoenix?
In Phoenix. Okay. And he said, that doesn't mean anything. People are going to always come to a new restaurant concept. So 3 months later, it was the same, tremendous. He said, doesn't mean anything. It's like, can't say anything.
He's like the dad you can't please.
Exactly. 6 months later, he said the same thing. This really doesn't mean anything. About 8 months later, he said, I've never seen anything like this.
Wow.
He said he's never had people come up to him on the street and hug him for opening a restaurant or beg him to open one of these in Buffalo, New York, or Kansas City.
What a beautiful thing.
Yes, that's been a beautiful thing. And for me, I created a lot of the recipes here, and some of this is food that I've eaten, for years, and to see people enjoying this is great.
And people come in with their heads in one way that I don't like these foods or I don't like certain things, and these ingredients are really slipped in a way that is very subtle, but still beautiful and flavorful.
And I think I've had many people tell me that they feel good when they leave the restaurant. And my experience, as I said, I like to eat out, but too often I don't feel that great when I eat out at restaurants. I feel like I ate too much, that the food doesn't really agree with me, and I spent a lot of money on it, and it was noisy, and when you eat this food here at True Food Kitchen, you feel good.
I had mentioned to you before the podcast that here in New Orleans, we have the Eat Fit program, and we work with restaurants, and that's a similar reception we get because people all over love going out to eat. But in New Orleans, it is so food centric.
I know.
And the idea, though, is we're not taking things away, but we're putting options there if you want it. And I think people respond to that, and exactly what you said, they don't feel weighted down. They still feel energized versus wanting to go take a nap.
Yeah.
How much of the menu do you have involvement with, of the dishes?
I oversee the menu. Some of the recipes are mine. There's a TLT sandwich with tempeh that's mine, spaghetti squash casserole, squash pie.
The squash pie looks like a pumpkin
really
pie.
Good. Yes, pumpkin pie. It's really good. I source, I still travel widely, and I'm always on the lookout for new ingredients. There's a dish on here that's got Korean sweet potato noodles, which most people have never seen. They're very low carb, low glycemic index, and they're very tasty and chewy. And we have a nice dish based on those.
And whether it's something you create or not, you're signing off on everything before it hits that menu.
Right, and it's got to be consistent with my nutritional philosophy and the philosophy of the anti-inflammatory diet.
So on the topic of judgment and people being very, or I shouldn't say very, people being judgmental when it comes to food and nutrition. What are your thoughts on that? I'll share mine, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I think you can't go around saying this is the right way to eat. That first of all, people are biochemically unique. We have different taste perceptions. We come from different cultures and ethnic backgrounds that have different food preferences. So I think you have to take all that into account to try to make generalizations. One generalization I feel comfortable making is that you want to try to avoid refined, processed, and manufactured food. I mean, that's what's doing us in today. Michael Pollan wrote that our great-grandparents wouldn't even recognize as food what most people eat today, and that's true. So but I'm very hesitant to tell people what they should eat. I personally am a pescatarian. I eat fish and vegetables, but I don't tell people to become vegetarians. But I will tell them that I think it is a good idea to reduce the percentage of animal foods in the diet, and for Americans, particularly beef. For a lot of reasons, including the health of the planet. I think it is good to try to reduce your consumption of beef.
One of the things that I think I have a hard time with is when someone's thinking wellness or health, if they're so far removed from it, there's so many barriers they're already putting up there. Oh, I need to go to the market, or it has to be organic, or things like that.
Or it's too expensive.
And then there's, I feel like there's a section of people who are very well-meaning and well-intentioned, but when everything must be, non-GMO, organic, local, et cetera, that puts even more barriers, and we just need people to eat vegetables.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, here's just an observation that I've made. When I'm in particularly in Italy and France, people have really good food available to them. Even if you're on the equivalent of interstates, the autostrada.
The gas stations there are incredible.
You get great salads and with balsamic vinegar and olive oil and stuff like that. I don't know why we put up with what we put up with.
The food in the gas stations there is gorgeous.
But I have known really so many Americans who had gone on vacations to Italy and France, were very worried about their weight. But just decided they were going to throw caution to the winds, eat everything. And for 2 or 3 weeks, they did that. And when they got back, we're amazed to find that they had lost weight.
Almost always,
even though
that's
their
the story.
activity was not that different. Now, what does that mean? There's something different about the food, I think. It's the quality of the food, and probably also the attitude about the food. The French look at us as a nation of crazed health nuts, that we approach the table as if it were a minefield. And for them, eating is mostly about pleasure. And you're not hustled out of restaurants. People take time over meals. They enjoy their meals. And the food is satisfying. I think the trend in America has been that people are eating more and more of less and less satisfying food. And that encourages them to eat more and more, less and less consciously.
So we were in Italy over the summer. And I'll share in a bit, but we did a big travel. We actually had the opportunity to travel for about 3 months. So we visited a lot of different places. But one of the places we went was Parma, Italy.
Yeah.
And where they have Parma ham, Parmigiano Reggiano. And we toured. My husband's like, are we selecting the town that we're going to because of cheese? Oh, absolutely, we are. And so one of the things that we learned is that, Parmigiano Reggiano, of course, is only in this very small area.
Right.
The cows have to be fed certain diets. The cows are local to that area, et cetera. And the message was, make sure it's Parmigiano Reggiano to have that full flavor. So we also took a cooking class with a family in their home in Parma. And Antonia there shared some recipes with us. 2 of the dishes had Parmigiano Reggiano in them. We get back to the United States, and it's like the first weekend we're back. And we're preparing the tortellis and these dishes that she had taught us for our family. So we go to the grocery store, and we get the what is fresh grated Parmesan, because we had a lot to do, so we weren't grating it ourselves. We were getting to buy it already grated. And the container said Parmesan, and it looked like quality, like from the cheese counter. Then we look and we say, wait a second, this was Parmigiano Reggiano. It was a much smaller container, but it was about the same price. So we said, okay, let's buy both. We went home and we did a taste test.
Yeah.
And the stuff that just said Parmesan that looked high quality, it may as well have been the stuff out of the Kraft can.
Green can.
And the flavor of that Parmigiano Reggiano was so bold, intense, melted in your mouth that exactly that. It was so satisfying.
You don't need to eat huge quantities or eat it all day long. And I think this is, what we try to do here at True Food Kitchen, that the flavors are really bold and we let the natural flavors of food come through.
It's absolutely incredible.
I think, as I say, when I grew up in the late 1940s, 1950s, and people didn't know about healthy food. I mean, a lot of the food that we ate growing up, today we wouldn't consider very healthy, but we ate 2 meals a day cooked from scratch. We didn't eat fast food. We didn't eat snack foods. We'd go out maybe once a week to a restaurant, but it was real food. And there was nothing like the obesity that we see today, or these epidemics of type 2 diabetes and so
rampant.
forth. It's rampant. And as I say, I think that the low quality of food here encourages people to eat mindlessly. You're not satisfied, so you're thinking about the next bite you want to eat.
And it doesn't have to be the fancy food. It doesn't have to be the Parmigiano Reggiano.
No, exactly.
But just buying real ingredients, real food, whole foods, and using the spices, the seasonings.
Exactly.
What about, let's talk your personal wellness regime. So where's home for you?
I live in Tucson, Arizona most of the year, and then I have a summer home on an island in British Columbia. So when it gets too hot in Tucson, I'm up in the Northwest.
It feels like it might always be too hot in Tucson.
No, it's only June, July, August, and part of September.
Yeah.
And those are the months that's really nice up north. Let's see, I have 3 big dogs who take me for walks.
And if you check out his Instagram page, you'll see the pictures of his puppies. They are so cute.
They're great. I love to garden, so I grow a lot of my own food, and there's no substitute for fresh food. It just tastes so much better. A lot of the dishes that I cook, people say, this tastes so great, and I haven't really done that much. It's just that they're not used to tasting, really, really fresh food. My main exercise is swimming. I try to swim every day. In Tucson, I have a pool, and the island, British Columbia, I swim in the ocean and in a lake. I do my breathing exercises every day. I do meditation in the morning. I do desk work. I'm a morning person, so I get up when it gets light, and I usually do my morning work, and afternoons I do other stuff.
Do you use an alarm to wake up?
No, never.
Never?
I wake up automatically, usually when it gets light.
That's
begin to get light.
Really incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned the breathing work. I've read it's the 4-7-8.
The 4-7-8 breathing, which you can, if you just put my name in 4-7-8 breath, you'll get on YouTube. You'll find instructions how to do it.
It's great. I read it in Arianna Huffington's Sleep Revolution.
Right.
Yes.
That's gotten tremendous play. I learned it from an old osteopathic physician.
I was going to ask if you created it or learned it.
Yeah, and I've taught it to many, many people, and it's just remarkable to see how that's.
Can you say
viral.
just kind of a quick run through?
Basically, you breathe in through your nose quietly to a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, and blow air forcefully out your mouth to a count of 8, and you repeat that for a total of 4 breath cycles. And you have to do that at least twice a day, religiously. And then after a month, you can increase to 8 breath cycles, and that's the absolute maximum. But you want to keep practicing this because you're putting a signal into your nervous system. And over time doing this, you change the balance in the involuntary nervous system and lowers blood pressure, lowers heart rate, improves digestion. It's the most powerful anti-anxiety measure that I found from.
I've used it, especially before I'm giving a presentation that I'm nervous about.
Right.
I do that.
Great.
Yes, so thank you.
and also, it's to me, this is a perfect example of what integrative medicine can do. It can look around and find things that aren't even on the radar screen of conventional medicine, and bring them into the mainstream. This costs nothing. Uses no equipment. Totally safe, and produces really powerful results. And
it's up to us to be aware that it's there and then remember to do it at those times that we need to. So you wake up without an alarm. First thing, do you do breathing?
Yeah, usually, I brush my teeth, then I come sit down. My dogs are usually still asleep at this point. I sit down and I do my breathing, and then
on the floor in a chair.
I do it on this edge of my bed,
okay,
sitting, and then I go from that into some sitting meditation. No particular time limit. It could be 10 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 15 minutes. And so I do that before I go about my routine.
And do you use the breathing technique as part of the meditation?
I do. I mean, I've done training in Zen meditation and Vipassana. So it's mostly keeping my attention on the present moment, either body sensations or the breath.
I think a lot of people are intimidated by the term meditation.
Yes.
But if you think focusing on your breathing, and even if meditation, for someone who doesn't do it, if you wake up and you do the 4-7-8 breathing technique and you just pay attention
That's
and
meditation.
Stretch. Yeah.
No, it's just focused awareness.
I have made a specific effort and have been following through with it for quite some time now, that I don't sleep with my phone right next to me.
That's great.
So not only in the night do you not get distracted by it, but in the morning when I wake up, it's not the first thing that I'm looking at.
Yeah, really good thing.
And I can focus on the breathing and thinking about how do I feel? Yep. Did I feel rested? And then remembering if I dreamed. Or
Very
what
good.
not if I dreamed, but what did I dream?
Well, you just mentioned devices.
Yeah.
And I think device addiction is a major concern. And it's really tough. I think you have to really work to limit your exposure. I don't use my cell phone a lot except when I'm on the road. And I try to make an effort to detach myself from my computer and email in the early afternoon and not pay attention to it. I don't always succeed, but I think it's a constant effort.
It's a constant struggle. And when we wake up, there's people who had somebody tell me she had shoulder pain. Well, she realized she was waking up in the night, looking at her phone propped up on one elbow.
Wow.
Right. And so it's so much. Okay. So to your schedule, we wake up, you do your breathing exercises, you do a meditation that maybe
then
5,
I
10 minutes.
usually I fix breakfast for my dogs. I may eat something myself. I usually make a bowl of matcha for myself. Then I may take the dogs out for a walk or a run. Come back. I may eat something. I've been experimenting with intermittent fasting, so sometimes I will eat breakfast. Sometimes I'll wait until later in the day. Depending on the time of year, I usually do my swim either in the morning if it's warm or later in the afternoon.
So not super regimented on it. You don't have a very inflexible. Yeah.
No. And then, as I said, the one thing is though, for desk work, writing, things like that, I got to do that in the morning. If I don't do it, I don't do it.
And then too much else comes in our minds, and
Yes,
sometimes
exactly.
that creative
Right.
clarity
Yeah.
is in the morning. Yeah. But you do the self-care first of the breathing, the meditation, walking with your dogs, getting your swim in, having the matcha. You do all of these before you're at that computer.
Yes.
The big change that I made, I mentioned as we were out of town for those months, when I came back, before our travels, I would wake up first thing in the morning. Before I did my exercise, I was working.
Huh.
And I found that I would end up working and I would have to make myself stop. And I always felt a little bit unsettled. So now I'm waking up and I'm doing my morning exercise first and then saying, okay, that can wait.
That sounds,
but putting that self-care first.
That sounds much better.
It's a positive, and I'm doing a lot of it outside when I can.
That's great.
Yeah,
like
which here in New Orleans, doing it outside can mean a very sweaty morning. But even if it's just stretches, going outside and here in nature.
Yeah.
For cooking, do you cook?
I do. That's one of my passions, and it's a hobby. And for me, it's a meditation.
Do you cook most nights if you're home?
Yes.
Do you go to the grocery store?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I have someone else who goes to the grocery store to me too, but I do some of my own shopping. And then, as I said, I grow a lot of my food. So
let me ask you this: when you're in the grocery store, do you have people who kind of follow you?
Yes.
And they're like,
not only that, even more annoying is if I'm in an airport eting and everybody's looking to see what I'm eating.
Right. Right.
I have
Totally.
to be aware of that, but I'm pretty good, so I'm not sneaking deep fried pork chops in.
Right. Right. They want to you see the phones come out busted.
Yeah.
So preparing meals and the cooking, growing your own food when you can, all of this is part of what's the relaxation for you.
Well, I would say food preparation and cooking really is for me. Chopping vegetables, I'm in a concentrated state. It really is. I think playing with my dogs, also reading, those are all relaxing activities for me.
For nutrition, what are the guiding principles that you live by? Do you consume? You don't consume meat at all?
I don't eat meat or poultry.
Okay.
Rarely eat eggs. If I'm on the road, I'll eat them in something. I do like high quality cheese. I can't imagine life without Parmigiano Reggiano. Occasionally eat yogurt. I eat a lot of fermented foods. I make my own sauerkraut and pickles and kimchi, which I like. I eat soy foods, whole soy foods, and I don't eat much bread. I do like pasta, so I occasionally eat pasta, and I eat fish.
And so the things that you really enjoy, pasta, even if it's white pasta, or bread, even if it's white bread, you'll indulge, but that's an indulgence.
Definitely.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I feel like the guiding principles that I follow are, the lean proteins, lots of the oily fish, vegetables, but I don't want to tell myself no on those things that truly bring me pleasure.
Right.
But they're just not part of my daily.
Right. I can't imagine life without olive oil either.
Exactly. I love a spicy infused with some good bread. Love that. And you mentioned intermittent fasting. I'm an advocate of it. I do it myself. It's something we've done a full podcast on this. If our listeners are curious, we've covered that also. But it's where you can do a 12-hour fasting window or 12 hours, 14, 16 hours. I've started calling the window that you eat your fueling window because I think feeding window or eating window sounds
I
weird.
like that, fueling window. Okay.
So calling it the fueling window, and that can vary, but there's a lot of science on that as far as
Agreed.
brain health.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to find what the optimum fueling window is for me, but I'm actively experimenting.
I do about an 8-hour fueling window.
Yeah,
However, if I feel like a couple of scenarios, if I'm really hungry and I say, man, I'm comfortable right now, then, or if I had a really hard workout, I might eat sooner.
Yes.
Or if I'm going to be given a presentation or a talk where I might be nervous, I don't want to go into that and
Right. Well, I
feel
think it's
shaky.
good to experiment and be flexible.
Right. So I admire that you kind of have these nutritional guiding principles, but also these wellness guiding principles of staying centered, but they're not so regimented that you kind of go with what the scenario is and what your situation for the day is. Tell me about supplements and nutritional supplements.
Okay. Supplements are not substitutes for the whole foods that contain them, because at best they provide a partial representation of the complex of compounds that are found in nature. Beta carotene being an example of that. And taking supplements doesn't excuse you from eating a good diet. Having said that, I think that supplements can be insurance against gaps in the diet. As I said, I grow a lot of my own food. I cook for myself. I'm a very careful shopper. And I also take a daily multivitamin, multimineral, because we need these micronutrients every day in the right amounts. And for one reason or other, like yesterday when I flew to New Orleans, I didn't get to eat, optimally. I didn't eat all the fruits and vegetables and herbs and spices that I would normally. In addition, I think some supplements in higher doses than you can get from food have specific therapeutic or preventive properties. But it's really important to know how much to take, what form of a supplement to take. And here's another area in which physicians are not educated. And this is something that we try to correct in integrative medicine.
Do you take anything in addition to the multi on a daily basis?
I take CoQ10. I take a number of Asian mushrooms for immune balancing. I take, let me see, what else do I take? I take magnesium.
And are there certain brands that you recommend, especially for a multivitamin?
Well, I think you want to learn how to read the label of a multivitamin. For instance, many people don't know that you should never take a multivitamin with iron in it unless you have a need for iron. If you've had blood loss, or you're a woman who's having regular periods, or you have a documented anemia, iron can be dangerous if you don't need it. I think you look at the vitamin E and see what form it is. Vitamin E comes in 8 forms in nature. There's 4 tocotrienols and 4 tocopherols. And ideally, you want a supplement that gives you as many of them as possible. You don't want to take something that just gives you beta carotene. You want to take mixed carotenoids, as many of them as you can. So, those are just some general guidelines.
Do you mind sharing which one you take? I know people are going to want to know.
The brand is Mega Food, which I have some affiliation with that company, but they're lower potency than vitamins that I took in the past, and I think it's better to err on that side.
So switching gears a bit to pressure, anxieties, fears, you don't seem like you experience that, but do you?
Well, I think everyone experiences it, but I think I'm pretty good at it, and I think my routines really help me with that, particularly the breathing practice. I've been doing that for a long time, and I've been doing that 4-7-8 breath for a long time regularly, and I think it's made a big difference.
Do things keep you up at night that you think about?
Very, very rarely. But I'm very aware if something has happened that I can't turn off my mind. Usually I fall asleep very easily.
And if it's swirling and that noise is there, something's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the breathing exercises, and what about alcohol? How do you do that?
I'm a moderate user of alcohol. I may have a drink 2 or 3 times a week. My preference is I love Japanese sake, cold sake. I like good red wine.
That's something that when people do drinks often or a lot, that anxiety, that poor response to pressure increases. So keeping that alcohol moderate, doing the breathing exercises. And as you said, keeping technology, you really limit technology. So you're only using your phone usually when you travel, your cell phone.
Right. And, email is a big one for me because that's my main method of communication. And if I ignore it, for a day or two, I'm overwhelmed by it. So I have to keep on top of that. But as I said, I try to detach from that before the afternoon.
So when you're looking at influencing and trying to positively impact people's behaviors, their beliefs, their perceptions, people have their mindset so often in one way, and we believe what we want to believe. What's your approach to try to kind of nudge that and edge to change that, or change that?
Well, first of all, I think you have to be an example yourself of the change that you want to see in others. Secondly, I think you have to, I'm a great believer in education. I think if you present information to people in ways that they can understand and connect with their own experience, they will follow through with it.
And giving examples of how. I think so many people hear a message, but it's like, well, where do I even do with that?
What do I do? Right.
So if someone is in kind of that self-destructive spiral that so many people are, with inflammation, sugar, white carbs, alcohol, poor sleep habits, and being well seems so far removed.
So you pick the easiest thing to change. Don't try to change everything. That's a mistake that I see people make. So try to pick one thing that you can work on and tackle that.
And you think starting with the easiest, yeah. And for a lot of people, it's something that may seem completely unrelated, but it can be a giant, huge.
Another practical tip that I have is, if you want to change habits, associate more with people who have the habits you want. You want to have better habits of exercise, spend more time with people who have good exercise habits.
And that can be as simple as going to the park and striking up conversation with the people that you see there regularly.
Yeah.
You've written 15 books, is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so if someone says, okay, I want to read all of them, but if someone wants to hear more or learn more and experience more of your philosophy, if someone had to pick just one, what would be your top book?
Well, there's two. One
them?
Is called 8 Weeks to Optimum Health, which is just a very concise plan. Another one that I have is Healthy Aging, which applies to people at any age.
So Healthy Aging and 8 Weeks to Optimal Health. And to keep up with you, your website, drweil.com, and it's weil.com. Social media, your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, and Flickr. At Dr. Weil, is that. Hopefully you have somebody helping you with those.
Oh, yeah, I don't do that myself.
That's a lot of platforms. You would not be able to minimize your screen time. You write a monthly column for Prevention Magazine. And you have a newsletter that's monthly called Self-Healing.
Self-Healing, right.
And people can sign up for that on your website.
Yes.
Okay. And True Food Kitchen.
And try to eat at a True Food Kitchen.
Yes. Well, this is fantastic. So, Dr. Weil, I'm super grateful for you for spending this time with us today. It's been incredible.
You're very welcome. Good to talk to you.
So I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Weil as much as I did. And you can find the links that we mentioned in the show notes of this episode. I'm Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. And if you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Facebook and Twitter, as well as Dr. Weil on all of his social media platforms at Dr. Weil. And if you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life possible.